Hello, dear friends. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm so happy to see you today. And of course, the topic that we have is about fears. We are going to discuss in details what different types of fears do we have. Also, I will share my experience about the most common astrology indication which can bring fears and how they can be different. I will also share with you some remedies, some natural remedies which you can use to support yourself specifically for fears when you experience different types of fears. Hello to everyone who is joining us today. This webinar is going to be very important for me personally because this theme, the theme about fears, is personally important for me. This is something which I have battled, I can say, for quite a long time. And I can definitely say that I have made a huge improvement in my life. And I really feel like I want to share this experience with you. So I will start with my personal story very shortly. I don't want this to take too much of our time today, but I also want to explain where I'm coming from, why it's so important, and that what I'm going to talk about today is not, something which I have read in the books only or in novels or in movies. This is something which I have experienced. And I really think that I have things to share with you, which hopefully will be helpful for you as well. And trust me that fears are one of the most common issues that people have nowadays. As you know, I am a professional astrologer and I'm working with people on a daily basis, and people share with me their personal stories, their questions, and so many people have different problems with fears. Of course, there are different types of fears. Some of them are extremely intense, extremely challenging, and others are not so problematic, of course. Others are, something which we can live with on a daily basis. But I truly believe that we always have something which we can do to help ourselves and to improve our condition. So I hope that today's topic, today's webinar will inspire you to search for solutions. That is basically the most universal advice I can give to all of you, because I will share things which have helped many people, but you always have to search on your own to try new things and just never to give up. That's basically the main advice I have for you. So let me start first of all with my experience, very quickly, my personal story. I think the year was 7 or 8 years ago. There was a very strong earthquake here in Sofia, the place where I live. The earthquake was near to Sofia, but it was a very, very, terrible experience. And unfortunately, it unlocked extremely intense fears in my life, which turned into panic attacks, which were very frequent and very, very intense, to the point where, I literally feel like I'm either going to go crazy or I will die. These are some of the most typical fears for people who experience panic attacks. And it's, you have to have this experience in order to understand what I'm talking about. But if you are lucky, if you haven't experienced that, of course, nowadays many people go through this experience, but I can assure you that I'm a person who has handled with that. And today I would say 99% panic free. I feel tension, for example, when I need to fly with an airplane. This is something which I just, have challenges with. But I'm fortunate enough to say that I have handled with this thing, and it is possible. And I know how difficult it can be, but I can definitely, encourage you to search for solutions, because there are solutions. And you don't need to have, panic disorder in order to take care of yourself and try to find solutions. Sometimes the intensity may not be so strong. You may not feel like you are dying, but it's still preventing you to live the life that you truly want. And I have tried many things. I have taken regular medicines for a short period because, the situation was really, really unpleasant. Then I used to take homeopathy, which was also something great for me. I can definitely encourage you to try that. And the third therapy, which helped me extremely, was the Bach flower system. This system is called Bach flower remedies or Bach flower essences. It's the same thing. This is the set here. I will explain more about it later, but this is also something which we are going to talk about today. This is something absolutely natural. These are essences from trees, plants, flowers. They are absolutely natural. And I'm not advertising the flowers. I'm not selling them. So, I mean, this is not just a sales presentation. But I will share some of those essences which you can use on your own right after this webinar. You can find those remedies, or you can go to a pharmacy or a drugstore and ask someone to prepare the combination for you. This is something which has helped me so, so much. So let's start with, first of all, which are some of the main indications in your birth chart which can show that you are more predisposed to fears. Generally speaking, people with more water and earth energy in the chart usually suffer from fears more frequently. I think that we all know which are the earth and water signs. I won't go into so much details, but those people are more predisposed in general. Of course, here we have to make the difference. So there are types of people who generally are worried, who are afraid of so many things, or, always expect something bad to happen. And this is kind of, their personality. And in other situations, of course, everyone at a certain point might be afraid of something. Fear for our health or fear for our children. And basically, there are countless types of fears here. But those people who are generally more predisposed are the ones who have strong water and earth energy in their horoscope. The planets which, in my experience, bring fears in almost every case are Saturn and Pluto. These are the two planets which bring the most intense fears. Of course, here you need to have some challenging aspects. Having, just any aspect between Pluto and your sun or moon is not a problem. But for example, let's say that Pluto squares your sun or your moon, even Mercury. Usually this is an indication that, the person may have some fears, not always things which he can explain. Sometimes he can, in other cases he cannot. But this is a combination which typically can bring fear. Saturn also. Saturn squaring your sun, Saturn squaring your moon may also, usually actually, in most of the cases, it brings certain fears. Uranus sometimes may also bring fears. They are a little bit more different. Usually there is a fear from the instability that you might experience, or the challenge that, things are difficult to be predicted, for example. That's usually the type of fears that Uranus can bring you. For example, Uranus squaring the moon or the sun sometimes may also bring, but this is a different condition, usually different situation. Neptune potentially may also bring some kind of fears, but usually they are related to, losing, the fear from losing your identity, or the fear that sometimes, you might be in a situation when it's difficult to control things. So Neptune sometimes may also bring fears. So these are the main planets in my experience. First, I would put Pluto. I think that Pluto can bring the most intense fears, which are more like panic. This is the Pluto energy. And again, I repeat, this is when, the energy is related to something challenging, like squares or oppositions in the birth chart. Then Saturn. Saturn can also bring fears, and they can be quite strong as well. Uranus may also bring, and Neptune. I think that these are the main planets which can bring you fears. Jupiter doesn't literally bring you fears. It may look more like, the fear of not being appreciated, for example, or the fear that you may not do your best. These are also some kind of fears, but they are different. So Jupiter, from that perspective, may bring you fears, but again, I repeat, they are different from the Pluto and the Saturn impact. So let's start with something more concrete about the fears. I see that other people are joining us, so welcome to everyone. So guys, today I would like to ask you if you can allow me first to present the things that I have for you. And after that, I will try to answer as many questions as possible. So make sure to remember your questions. And at the end of the presentation, I will give you the opportunity to ask your questions, and I will try to, do my best to answer them. So let's start with one classification, which is actually created by Dr. Bach, Dr. Edward Bach, the person who has created this system of those natural remedies for healing. So the first type of fears that he classifies are the concrete fears. So what do we mean by concrete fears? Concrete fears are those which you can explain clearly. For example, let's say you're afraid of illness, or you're afraid of poverty, you're afraid that you may not be able to find a new job, or you're afraid of flying with airplanes like me, for example. So those are, or you're afraid of dentists or doctors or pain. So if you can explain what is it that you are afraid of concretely, these are called the concrete fears. So let me share some of the main astrology indications which may bring those type of fears. Here, unfortunately, people with more Capricorn energy, like myself, I have a stellium in Capricorn, including my sun. So I'm definitely someone, who is more predisposed to concrete fears. So people with more Capricorn energy or Saturn energy may also suffer more from those concrete fears. Usually, there's something which you can measure, or something which you can see, or something which you can explain. It doesn't need to be something reasonable. I mean, it doesn't need to be something logical. But it's there. So if you have your sun or ascendant in Capricorn, or a stellium in Capricorn, you might be more predisposed to fears. Another astrology indication for those concrete fears can be if your Saturn is in a very weak position. And this may sound strange to you, because we said that, if Saturn makes the challenging aspects, these are the cases when Saturn brings problems. But Saturn generally is not only a challenging planet. I mean, this is a planet that we definitely need, because it also allows you to be grounded, and it allows you to materialize things. And also, it brings the feeling for stability, to live here on this planet, to live your life. So when Saturn is very weak in your chart, for example, Saturn in Cancer, or Saturn is intercepted, or Saturn sometimes in 12th house as well. If Saturn is in a very weak position, usually those people have challenges with feeling stability in their life. They may feel like life is not secure, life is not stable. And those are the cases when they may experience, they may have some concrete fears. The other indications are usually related to Pluto, Saturn, or Uranus, having challenging aspects with your Sun, Moon, or Mercury. So if you have, for example, Saturn making opposition with your Moon in the birth chart, this is an indication that you're more predisposed to some concrete fears. Another thing which I also need to mention is that those situations or experiences might also appear when you have the transit Saturn making opposition with the Moon. So this is also something important. And this system which I'm presenting you today, the Bach flower system, is something which you can use also to handle easier with difficult or challenging transits. So if Pluto makes opposition with your Sun, Moon, or Mercury, you may experience that. By the way, the example which I gave with myself, when I had those intense fears, those panic attacks, the transit Pluto made conjunction with my Neptune, Sun, and Mercury in Capricorn. And at the same time, Uranus was squaring those three planets. So it's a horrible combination, honestly. And it literally is bringing, some kind of panic or extremely intense fears. So if you have those challenging transits, unfortunately, this might be one of the manifestations. So which is the remedy which I can recommend you if you have those type of concrete fears? This remedy is called Mimulus. Here I will show you how it looks like. I have those cards so you can see. Yeah, I think it looks okay. So it's a small flower with yellow leaves, and this is called Mimulus. Let me see, where do I have it? Yeah, this is how it looks like, the remedy. This is something which you can take if you have some concrete fears. And by the way, this is also the remedy for Capricorn. One thing which is extremely interesting for the Bach flower remedies is that they have connection with the 12 astrological signs and the 7 planets from the septenary. The 12 essences which are related to the 12 signs are called the 12 healers, and the 7 essences which are connected to the 7 planets are called 7 helpers. And here I think that I can present you also something new which I am about to make for you guys. This is an intense and extensive 8-week course about the Bach flower remedies and astrology. You may find the link below the video. Right now you may enroll with a 25% discount. And during this training, I will explain everything that you need to know about working with those essences on your own, how you can prepare the combinations, because there are basically the whole set includes 38 essences, and you may use them in combinations from 5 or even 6. There are no side effects. You can combine them with every other therapy, traditional or untraditional or alternative, and they are so amazing. And they are not only for fears. Of course, today's topic is about fears. That's why I'm presenting you the 5 essences which are related, which can help actually for different fears, but they can be used for so many things. So for more information, you can check the link below. So we explored this remedy, the Mimulus remedy. As I said, it is extremely helpful if you have some concrete fears. Also for people who have a very strong Capricorn energy. These are people who can be very, very, like stuck sometimes. They might be afraid of going with the flow. They might be afraid of just, experimenting. I think that if you're aware of with astrology and, the Capricorn energy, you will understand what I mean. Those people sometimes can be very rigid or afraid of change or, trying to control things. Mimulus is a great remedy in those cases. And if anyone also wants to share some concrete fears, or maybe you are wondering if your fear is concrete, you may also share that in the comments. It would be very helpful for everyone. So this is the first remedy. As I said, the Capricorn remedy for concrete fears. I think that, yeah, this was one of the first essences which I used to take in combination with another one, which I will share with you in a couple of minutes. So the next type of fear that we have, the next type of fears are vague fears or unclear fears. Usually these are fears which we cannot explain. This is the sensation when you feel like you're afraid of something, but you don't know exactly from what. Usually those are also irrational fears, like, for example, fear from the dark can also be one of those vague fears. What is it that you are afraid? This is not something concrete. You don't know what is there, but, you are afraid of it. Or also fear from deep water, that there are people who are afraid of that also. This is, by the way, a very typical condition for children. As we know, many children are afraid of the dark, or late at night, they say, well, I'm afraid of something. They cannot explain why, but this is an inner tension, which can be very, very unpleasant and very, very, blocking for the person. Because with the concrete fears, at least I'm afraid of flying with airplanes. And the simplest thing that you can do is, well, try not to fly with airplanes until you solve this issue. But when the fear is irrational, it's basically almost impossible to escape from this, or to try to pretend that, it's not there. So those type of fears can be, I would say, more challenging. And this sensation that you cannot explain it, you don't know where it's coming from, can be also very annoying, very unpleasant for the person. So let's see which are some of the main astrology indications which may show that the person may have more of those fears. Here, the water element is usually something which is typical. People with a strong accentuated water element in the chart. This can include, like many planets or a couple of planets in water signs, or sun or ascendant in water signs. Also, 8th or 12th house. This is something which I have definitely seen in my practice, in my experience. People with many planets, especially in 8th house, they may suffer from those type of, irrational or unexplainable fears. I would call them like that, unexplainable fears. So another thing, again, some of the indications, of course, are the same. For example, here also Pluto and Uranus can bring those type of fears, those type of vague fears or unclear fears. But the difference is that here I would also include Neptune. For example, Neptune squaring, let's say the transit Neptune squaring your moon or squaring your sun. This can be a very complicated period when some people, not everyone, but somebody may feel like they are losing the ground beneath their feet, or they don't have their clear identity, or they may feel like, they're losing control over themselves. So Neptune can bring those type of fears as well. Pluto, as we said, also, the unclear fears when you feel like, there is another power which is taking control over you. This is also, an indication which can bring those things. And again, I would like to remind you that we are analyzing the birth chart itself, but also we are talking about the transit. So, for example, in the birth chart, your Pluto may not have any challenging aspects, but let's say that the transit Pluto squares your Mercury, and suddenly you have this inner tension that something bad might happen to you or to someone else. So these are the unclear or more irrational or vague fears. For those cases, we have another Bach flower remedy, which I can recommend you. This remedy is called Aspen. I know that it looks really strange. I think that this is one of the strangest essences which we are using, or at least it looks, more specific. Honestly, I don't think that I have seen, this plant around here, but it is used as an extract, as an essence. It really helps people who experience those type of vague fears when you have this inner tension, or sometimes for people who are more trembling, this can be one of the remedy for which can help them. Of course, it has also other situations when it can be applied. For example, people who use more alcohol, for example, when they start trembling, this is one of the essence which can help them. But definitely remember this essence if you experience this inner tension, when you expect something bad to happen without a logical reason. Okay, fears of pain. Yeah. Somebody here shares at the chat. Fear of pain and feeling other people. Well, for you, I think that the next remedy which we are going to analyze can be very, very helpful, because it's the Pisces remedy. And we can also describe the next type of fears. The next type of fears are the more intense fears, which can turn into panic. Literally, these are the situations when the person is absolutely terrified. There might be an objective reason for that, by the way. For example, a serious shock. Or, for example, that you're about to go through a surgery. Very often people are panicked. They are extremely afraid of that. But unfortunately, these are also the situations when we have panic attacks, when there is no logical reason, and yet you feel like, you might gonna die, or something extremely bad will happen, or, like it feels like it's the end of your world, literally. So these are the most intense fears. Here we can include also people who generally tend to be scared easily. For example, personally, I can say that I'm one of those people. Have you seen someone when, for example, you come from the back, you see them on the street and you come from their back and you just want to say hi, and you, for example, touch them on the shoulder and they are jumping because they don't see you and they don't expect to, someone to touch them. So people who get frightened easily, they can really benefit actually from the next remedy, which I would like to present you, which is called rock rose. This is the essence which is very positive for people with a strong Pisces energy. So if you have those type of fears, you know, when you are in a panic for a concrete reason or without a concrete reason, this is the remedy which may really, really help you. Personally, I would say that this concrete remedy made the biggest impact for me, rock rose. It's so, so tender. Before that, also, I actually need to mention a little bit about the indications in the astrology indications which tend to bring, you know, which tend to increase the possibility of experiencing those situations or feelings. Again, here I repeat the Pisces energy. Sun, moon, or ascendant in Pisces, unfortunately, can bring those type of, you know, increased sensitivity, which eventually brings more fears. Also, people with more intense or many planets in 8th house. Even the sun in 8th house might be enough for you to have more of those intense fears. Not for everyone, of course. This is not like a recipe, but there is a much higher chance. So 8th house, 12th house may also bring irrational fears, which may potentially turn into panic sometimes. And Pluto. Pluto is definitely the planet which is mostly related to panic. When you feel like you're totally losing control, or you are so helpless, or, you know, your life depends on an outer force or the environment or other people. For those people, rock rose is, I would say, one of the best remedies, which I can definitely recommend you. Okay, the next type of fears. This is a very interesting type. Fear of losing control. Fear of losing control. Sometimes this could be, you know, like not such an intense fear, which may not be extremely problematic. Like, for example, you don't want to lose control at work or at your job, or, you know, you feel like you always need to order things or to structure things, and that's mostly okay. But sometimes people may go into a situation when they are extremely afraid that they may lose control. For example, panic attacks usually bring this sensation that you feel like you're completely losing control over your body, over your mind, over your thoughts. And the fear of going crazy is here also included, or which is, by the way, something which is not happening. So people who are afraid of going crazy, they are not the ones who go crazy. And this is something which I have learned from a psychiatrist, very experienced psychiatrist, which was so important for me. And but anyway, it's a very unpleasant situation as well when you feel like you are completely losing control. The main astrology indications which can bring those type of fears. Yeah, here, actually not a small, it's a significant difference which I have found. This is very typical for people with more fire energy. They may have, for example, many planets in fire signs, or very strong Mars, or even very strong Pluto. But here, usually, you need to have more of this fire energy in combination, for example, also with some water energy or some challenging aspects by Pluto. But this is a much, usually, as you know, a sensation which is expressed more openly, and it's more visible, and you feel like, you know, you are about to lose control, and for example, people will see that or something like that. Here, the remedy which is very, very helpful is called cherry plum. It's one of the really beautiful essences or flowers. Actually, it's a tree, essence from a tree. And it's used to help people who are afraid that they may lose control for different reasons. For panic attacks, this is one of the most typical essence which is added, by the way, because there is this sensation that you are losing control. Also for people who have any kinds of attacks, I mean, like, like some kind of seizures, or when something happens immediately or suddenly, and it's like a different situation. For example, even for certain physical conditions, this cannot be applied as well. This can be used. But for those type of sensations, when you feel like you can explode, for example, this is not only fear. Sometimes we may have anger included as well. But if you feel like, you have so much tension within you that you are going to explode, sometimes it's visible, this tension, but keep in mind that sometimes those people may try to hide this. And, they are not always screaming. I mean, they're not always loud and expressing it so openly, but it's visible. I mean, they are tense. You may see their posture is very specific. For example, they may keep their fists together like they are always ready, to fight with things. There is an incredible amount of tension when people experience this type of, fear. And cherry plum is the most useful or most helpful remedy, which I can definitely recommend people. So if suddenly, something happens and you feel like you are losing control, or you feel like you can explode, that's how, terrified you are, or that's how angry you are, in those cases, cherry plum is a great essence. And the last type of fears that we have according to this classification, these are the fears for other people. When you are afraid that something bad might happen to someone else. Here, again, we can talk about rational fears and irrational fears. For example, a rational fear is when a close relative is suffering from a serious disease. And unfortunately, in those cases, you have all of the logical reasons to be afraid or to be worried for this close person. But in other cases, we might be afraid for someone else without a clear reason. These are people who are generally worried and concerned for others. As you may guess, the most typical case when, those fears appear are when mothers are afraid for their children. I would say that mothers are the most common users of, this remedy, which is used for people having fears for others. So there are many women, who are afraid that something bad may happen to their child, that he may get sick, or he might get hit by a car, or, those type of terrifying scenarios that only mothers can, think of, because they love their children so much and they want to protect them. Not only children, of course, you might be worried for your parents, you might be worried for your partner. And here, the person who shared, that they're afraid for others, that something bad might happen. Sometimes you might be afraid for people who you don't know closely, of course. And this is very unpleasant, of course. This can be very challenging for the person. In those cases, the flower or the essence which I can recommend you is called red chestnut. And here is how it looks like. As you can see, it's so beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful flowers, by the way. Let me put it closer so you can see it better. It's really beautiful. And By the way, I will explain more about the cards and why I'm showing them to you in a little bit, but they are very helpful as well. So if you are worried for someone else, for your relatives, for your children, parents, you know, in whatever situation, red chestnut can be a great remedy for you. Which are the main astrology indications here? Again, the strong water energy. People with more water or earth energy, usually they're caregivers, they are concerned about others, they may have many irrational fears as well. So usually they're more predisposed. People with also women, but not only women, with a very strong moon, but also with some challenging aspects. For example, in conjunction with Uranus or squared by Pluto. They may also be more afraid for the people that they love. Also, in some cases, I have found out also that, for example, Pluto or Saturn in seventh house may bring fears for your partner. You might be worried that something bad might happen with him. Or Pluto or Saturn in your fifth house may also bring more fears related to your children. So these are the most common indications. But as you can understand, everyone at some point might be afraid for the people they love. As I said, you know, even if you don't have those challenging aspects in your chart, let's say that a close relative is really sick. It's normal, it's understandable that you will be afraid for him and his health or, you know, his condition. So very, very often, you know, we may have different fears, and unfortunately something typical is that fears attract more fears. Usually we don't have only one fear, we may have many of them, and they attract more and more. But again, the point of my presentation is to convince you that there are always things that you can do to handle with those fears, to improve your life, to heal yourself. And the main topic that, the main place basically where we are going to discuss all of the things which you can do to support yourself is the 8-week course, which will begin on the 5th of May. It will be an 8-week course, and I will explain everything that you need to know about this wonderful system for healing yourself. This is something which you can do on your own. You don't need a medical degree. They are not, you know, dangerous. They are extracts from different plants or trees or flowers. So this is definitely something which you can do on your own. And again, I'm sharing this experience because I have used this system for years. Of course, I started with myself. Then I started using it for friends, for close people, and eventually I started using it for clients. And it's amazing what this system can do for you. Again, there are no empty promises or words here because there are no guarantees. I cannot give you 100% guarantee that, you know, this system may help each and every person and each and every single problem that they may have. But what I can promise you is that it's definitely worth trying, and there is no harm in that. And it can help you in so many ways, which sometimes, you know, are so difficult to be explained. And again, it's so interesting that we have a connection between the signs and the planets and certain essences. And it's just like a magic how, you know, helpful this can become. You always need the conversation, you always need the communication, or you know, to ask yourself, well, how do I feel, you know, which is my main problem right now. You can never prescribe things only looking at the chart of certain person, but if you combine the two things, I mean, analyze the chart. For example, like in my case, I have a stellium in Pisces, I have an afflicted moon by Uranus and also by Saturn, indirectly. I have a stellium in Capricorn, so it's so obvious, you know, that I'm more predisposed to fears, concrete fears, sometimes even irrational fears. So it might be extremely helpful for you knowing your chart and also using those remedies or those essences also. And it's not something complicated. You can literally do that on your own at home. So if you are interested, you can find the link below this video. We have a 20% discount right now if you join us now, if you enroll. If you have any questions, of course, you are welcome to ask them related to the course or to the fears or maybe certain astrology indication which you are not really sure of whether this can, you know, be related to fears. You may ask those questions now. I will do my best to share my experience and my opinion about that. One more thing also, which I forgot about the 8-week course. As I said, it will start on the 5th of May. It will be 8 weeks in a row, each Sunday. All of the webinars will be recorded, so you will be able to watch them whenever you want to, if you cannot join us live. So yeah, I've got you covered. Yeah, Debbie has signed up for this. Oh, great. And she has the same set and the cards. Yeah, those cards are extremely interesting. And I will teach you also how you can use those cards. So I'm using actually 2 decks of cards. Here, those cards are literally pictures of the Bach flower essences. I have also another deck, which is very beautiful. Here, there are drawn pictures of the remedies, but they also have some kind of messages. So I will teach you how you can use those, or any deck, of course, to support your work. Because something important is also to trust your intuition. There is no mistake. I mean, even if you don't pick the best remedies for you or for another person, there is no harm in that. But the biggest impact is when you can find, of course, the most relevant for this person. Yeah. So yes, I have studied, yeah, and of course, astrology. And also, I'm not sure, yeah, I think I didn't mention this, that my formal education is in biochemistry. One of the things which I have studied is about biochemistry. I have also studied healthcare management, and this is just something which I have always been interested in. Medicine, anatomy, physiology, the human body, the different disease, why they come into our life. And one thing also, by the way, which is very important for using this system, but I believe that also for each alternative system for healing, is to always search for the emotional or psychological issue which has created the physical condition. And I will give you advices about interesting books which you may read related to this topic, but this is so helpful because each concrete part of the body is related to, you know, certain area. And for example, the different types of diseases also can show you what kind of issue you might have. For example, inflammations or things which are related to, for example, skin issues which make the skin really, really red, or even hot temperature. These are conditions which are related to usually to some kind of anger or some kind of fire energy which is not expressed constructively. So we are going to talk in details also about that, and it's so interesting. Very interesting thing which Sophie shares. I'm currently trying to find furniture for an apartment that I'm buying, and I feel paralyzed and suffer having to decide with limited budget. I'm a Sag, have a stellium in Libra. Okay, Sophie, so you are a great example of the Libra essence. Let me find it. It's called scleranthus. I think I'm, yeah, pronouncing it correctly. Let me find the card here. I will show you how this remedy looks like. Scleranthus is the remedy, which is, as I said, part of the 12 healers, the ones which are connected to the 12 zodiac signs. And this is very typical for people with a strong Libra energy. They may not feel comfortable when they need to take decisions. The reason usually is because people with a strong Libra, they are capable of evaluating things. They see things from different angles. They see the ups and downs. And that's why, it's difficult for them to take decision. So a great remedy which I can recommend you is scleranthus. Okay, where is it? Yeah, I found it finally. Yeah, here the picture is not really beautiful, but here is how it looks like. This is scleranthus. This is the essence which we use for those situations when it's extremely difficult for you to take decision. By the way, sometimes this could be, for example, you cannot take decision whether you should get married or not, or you need to choose between two job opportunities and you are not sure which is the best for you. And yes, you may feel paralyzed or it might be very difficult for you. Scleranthus is the remedy which I can recommend you. And if you also think that there is certain level of fear, for example, fear that you may not do the best job or that you can make a mistake, I would also include Mimulus. Mimulus. This is also something which I can include because the remedies might be combined. I usually use up to 6 in one combination, and the impact is so much stronger when you combine the right essences, of course. Debbie shares, I definitely feel illnesses are related to emotional states. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you may find, for example, people with lots of earth energy in their charts, or people with a very strong Saturn, or Saturn with challenging aspects. They very often they have problems with their bone system. It could be the spine, it could be the back, the knees, and usually their lack of flexibility, which is more on an emotional and psychological level. We know that earth people with a strong earth and Saturn energy, they are not flexible. They are the opposite of flexible, and at some point this can affect literally the body. The knees hurt you, or the back, or they are literally not flexible physically. So it's always related. Is the bladder connected to Libra? I would say it's more the Scorpio energy. Bladder is related also people who experience intense fears, by the way, very often, not very often, but sometimes it may affect the bladder. Yeah, Sophie shares that she has struggled with inflammations for 3 years, and lately she has been angry. Yes, anger is very typical. Also, for example, people who have acids in their stomach. There are people who regularly have this condition. This is also an indication for anger. Sometimes there are in different cases. Sometimes it's something understandable or visible for the person. And he says, yes, I'm so angry at my boss. I'm so angry at my child. And he feels this anger. But in other cases, this may also appear when the person is suppressing the anger. For example, on a subconscious level, he thinks that it's absolutely unacceptable for someone to get angry at other people. And here I would say this condition is more typical for women. Sometimes women feel like, they always need to be polite and kind and understandable and caring. And at certain point, they suppress their anger. And sometimes, it can bring those type of issues. So always pay attention. This is, a huge theme, a huge topic about the relevance between the body symptoms, the illness, the concrete illness, and the psychological or emotional issues that we have. And there is always a connection. Sometimes it's not so easy to find the explanation, but you always need to search for that. And another thing which can also be very interesting is to learn to listen to your body, because the body can really give you important messages. And actually, the main idea of, I would say, all of the alternative methods of therapy and healing, the homeopathy, the Eastern methods, it is the fact that the illness, any illness in the physical body, a physical illness, is a message to you that you need to change something, something is wrong in your life. And it's not a way to be punished. It's not a way to be tortured or to suffer. You need to accept this as a lesson. You need to find the right message for you and to try to make a change. I mean, yeah, maybe it sounds too simplistic. It's not so easy, but that's the right approach in my case. There is an interesting, medicine is one of my hobbies, by the way, one of the things which I am really passionate about. And there is one alternative method. I think it was called German medicine. And they are very extreme actually in their interpretation. And they say that cancer, literally, the physical illness cancer, is actually a way for the body to heal itself. So I'm not an expert in German medicine, but maybe it might be something interesting to someone. So you may research that topic. But this type of traditional understanding that, well, something hurts me, I need to find the way to, stop it, and then it's gone and it's okay. Usually it doesn't work. And the best approach, the right approach, is to try to find how to solve the cause for the problem, not to treat the symptoms only. And that's basically the main principle also in homeopathy, which is a great way for healing. Okay, do you have any other question, guys, or some personal experience that you have, or something that you want to share with others, or you need some kind of advice or support? But the main idea, again, I repeat, is to never give up and always search for things to support yourself, to help yourself, to heal yourself. And eventually it all leads to healing your soul, healing your mind, healing your heart, in some cases healing the past. Yeah, Debbie, during the course, we are going to talk about all of the remedies and the cases when you can apply them, and who are the people who really need those or certain essences. So this is going to be a very intense training, in my opinion, extensive training, 8 weeks. I made that on purpose. One of the options was to make, for example, a weekend, and let's say to, have a couple of lectures during 2 days. From one side, it would be easier for me, but I think that it won't be so helpful for you. It won't be so useful. I think that during this 8-week program, all of you will go through a process of finding more insights about yourself. And you will have the opportunity to try some things and to ask for advice or guidance. So it will be a process. And yeah, I try to make it as helpful as possible for you. Okay, guys, so let's see, is there another question? Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that it was helpful. Again, the main point of this webinar was to inspire you to find ways to heal your soul, heal your heart, heal your mind. Find your own thing. And if you feel like the Bach flower remedies can be your thing, or that you are open to trying it, you are absolutely welcome to join us. You will find more information below the video. If you have any questions, you can also send them to me. I will be happy to answer you. Yeah, thank you, Sophie, as well. Yeah, I think that if you are watching this webinar, there is certain reason for that. And everything happens at the right time. I'm absolutely sure about that. So there are no coincidences, there are no mistakes here. Everything happens for a reason, and we have to trust the process. That's something I'm absolutely sure of. Okay, so thank you very much again, and I'll talk to you very soon. Have a wonderful weekend.